Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and today let's have a look into a fantastic freeware mod to the Synaptic Airbus A220. On flightsim.to you can find a mod by Liz3 that is called Synaptic A220 ACARS&CPDLC, and the mod does exactly what the name suggests. It adds ACARS and CPDLC capabilities according to the commonly seen hobby standard to the Synaptic Airbus A220. So let's go ahead and have a look into the mod and what it can do, and we'll do that by jumping into the flight deck over here. And first things first, let's have a very quick look at the product page on flightsim.to. So this is what the mod looks like, and I'm going to link it in the video description below. It adds support for all three modern networks, Hobby, Sane Tensions and Beyond ATC, the latter of which is experimental. Now, let's go ahead and have a look at what exactly that mod can do. So, as the name suggests, it adds an ACARS and CPDLC implementation into the Synaptic A220. The way that the system works on the 220 is that you can find it up here on the CNS page, and you will see that you don't just have the tune functionality here, but currently you also have DATALINK and CPDLC. Now let's have a quick look into the different features of that mod. We're going to start on the DATALINK page, where you got two pages, AOC and ATS. Now, starting on the AOC page, this is where you can initialize the flight data, which you're basically going to type in, and then you can press request in order to initialize it according to your SimBrief profile. Then there's also the free text menu, where you can send messages to any station that's associated with your currently active network. Now, from there, let's go back a little bit and have a look into the ATS page. On here, you can do an ATIS request for, again, all three networks, and then you have the departure clearance, where you can request a pre-departure clearance, like, well, I'll tell you what, let's not talk about it, let's go ahead and show this real quick. So, I'm just going to initialize my flight plan over here, so let's go ahead and uplink that plan. Here we go, activate SEC and execute. Then let's just quickly download that flight plan over here so that we got our call sign, which is City Air 9 Yankee Yankee. Alright, so let's just go back and out and back in again so that the plane picks everything up that it needs. Now you will notice the flight ID is still empty. The way you fill this is you go to the tune page, then onto your transponder TCAR setting, and down there you enter the flight ID. So let's go ahead, and we got the City Air 9 Yankee Yankee. And now going back to the ATS and departure clearance field, you can see this is filled as well. The facility will be Frankfurt, our ATIS is Alpha, we're at gate Alpha 34, and with that we can press send. Now this sends our pre-departure clearance request. We do also have oceanic clearance requests available, trip request, which basically is your standard meta request, so if you want the Frankfurt weather over here, then you can easily request it and get it down here. So, very easy stuff. If you want to return to the request menu, you can simply do that by hitting the request key again down here. So, real easy stuff. You also do have an ATS log over here, where we can see our pre-departure clearance request that's been filed, and that's pretty much the DATALINK pages. Next up is CPDLC, and over here there is a little bit more stuff that you can do. First of all, we do get the answers to our DATALINK request up here, so we are just getting the PDC request, and over the message log screen you can actually review all the past messages that you may have sent. Then we've got the settings page. Over here there's a couple things you can do. You got the log on page, where you can log on to en route CPDLC, so departing Frankfurt over here, going southbound, we would log on to Echo Delta Uniform, and so on. You log on to the station that's online. Lastly, also in the settings, there's the system info, and this is where things get really interesting, because up here in the settings is where you can connect to the different networks. So you can choose between Sane Tensions AI, Hobby and Beyond ATC, then you can paste your code in here. So for example, for my Say Intentions AI code, I would just go set new, then I would hit Ctrl V in order to paste my code that I have previously copied from the Say Intentions page. The same would also apply to your Hoppy code if you've selected the Hoppy network and so on. And that way you can actually set the entire system up and connect it. Last but not least, there is the request page up here, where, as you can see, there's a couple different things that you can request from ATC. On one hand side, you can do position reports, then you can make altitude requests, so basically climb and descent, then you can make speed requests, and finally you can also request direct twos over this page up here. Now let's have a look at what happens when we receive a message. So you can see ATC message showing right up here on the ICAS. That tells us that a new message has just been received. There's two ways to bring a message up when you have been on a different page than the CNS page. By pressing CNS, you're going to be brought right to the page of the incoming message. When you then hit message log, you can see up here we have received a message that needs a response. So let's go ahead and click on that, and that's our IFR clearance. Now, you can see three different prompts that we can follow. We can either accept it, tell ATC to stand by, the latter is important because messages do time out after a certain time interval, or you can reject the message, and if you want to reject it, you can also give reasons for it. Now, obviously, those reasons do not always make sense. For example, for an IFR clearance, it doesn't make sense to reject something due to weather. However, due to aircraft performance, you could reject a clearance if you're unable to meet the constraints of the SID. Now, on top of the buttons down here, you also have the accept, standby, and reject buttons available right up here. And those do actually work. So if I want to accept this IFR clearance, I can either do that down here, or I can press the accept button up here. And you can see that this actually works as well. So now we've responded to the clearance with Wilco, aka we have accepted that IFR clearance. And that's how this works. Now there is a load button up here. What does that do? Let's say that ATC sends you a frequency or sends you a direct to a waypoint. Using the load button, you can basically load whatever clearance air traffic controller sent you through the CPDLC menu. So for example, if you get a frequency, you hit load, it would tune in the standby. However, I do think that that functionality is not implemented at this point. I think it will be added in the future if I read that right. However, that's basically how this would work. And looking at what a tremendous work this gentleman has done with his implementation in the A220, I wouldn't be surprised if we see further things added in the future. Well guys, and that's how ACARS and CPDLC work in the A220 using the free mod from flightsim.to, again, which I am going to link in the video description and in the pinned comment underneath the video. Now finally, a last little work here, because I'm sure that some haters are gonna show up in the comments again and say like, oh, see, it is so easy to do, it can be done for free, so why didn't Synaptic do it? Well, Synaptic has actually decided to go down a slightly different path with their DATALINK. Instead of simply supporting the older systems that already exist, like remember Hoppy is like what, 20 years old by now? Maybe even a little more than 20 years? So instead what Synaptic is doing is that they are creating their own CPDLC system, which is going to follow a modern standard. And in fact, Synaptic are not the only developers who are doing that. For example, PMDG have also experimented with that in the past. Remember the whole global flight ops thing? And PMDG for a long time refused to implement a Hoppy-based solution because they would rather have had a system that followed the real-world gold standard rather than using the kind of outdated and somewhat limited Hoppy standard. However, that's just some background over there as to why Synaptic haven't implemented DATALINK or ACARS solution in the plane natively. But it's great to see that a third-party free solution is now available on flightsim.to. Well guys, so check it out, use the link below. So far I've used it on one flight and I didn't have any issues with it, so I hope that you're going to enjoy it as well. Thank you very much for watching. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and then I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.